This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast. I am your moderator for the day, Bud, here with Moneyball Ross and Data Mike. We've been on the road the last couple weeks. We've had lots of new things go on. The Fed cut rates after last week's episode. Listening to Professor Ross, took all of his advice in, and Chairman Powell said, "We need to cut rates, don't we?" Right, Ross?
He did.
Now, for those of us who listen to the pod, rates might not seem like it's impactful to what it means about selling beer, but all of these things are the basis for what costs in the economy. Debt, long-term debt, short-term debt, it drives the whole machine up and down the street for what we do every single day. So while we may feel like we're far away from it, it is way more impactful than we think it is to what we're doing every single day as well. So what happened this week, Ross? Because last week we talked about, did Joe Sixpack sniff this out? Are we going to go through a rate cut cycle? What does the rate cut cycle look like? And ultimately, the Fed did cut rates by quarter point.
Yeah, it's important. I think you tied it together there, which is, this is not an economic podcast, but I think that it touches everybody. The dollar you spend is half of every single transaction in the entire economy, which includes our industry, right? So, somebody else's spending is your income. And I think that it's important for us to kind of keep an eye on the macro. What's that old saying about politics? You can not care about politics, but politics cares about you.
Yeah.
It's similar, right? You can not care about economics, but economics cares about you. And in this scenario, I think what's interesting is, I think we talked about it last week, and we talked about the start of a cutting cycle. And I also talked about on that, I think we pretty well knew it was coming, but I also said that we would know by now what the inflation numbers were, because they came after the decision, or actually they came before the decision, going into Wednesday. But what I think was interesting about those data points is they told us different stories. And again, I want to tie this back to our industry specifically, but you and I had a conversation earlier this week around price increases this year. And I think this is an important story that connects to that and helps us explain what we're looking at and what's happening. So we got two very different inflation prints. One was it was actually negative year over year for producer price inflation. So that is the inflation that suppliers are seeing. So the analogous in our industry is the supplier. So AB, Molson Coors, and that's heavily driven by commodities. Whether it be steel, aluminum, glass, oil, the means of producing and moving the product to us.
Think of it as input costs, things that are raw materials that are going to make products.
That's perfect. But what we saw on the consumer side is we still see persistent 3% year over inflation. In fact, it was a little higher than they expected, whereas producer price was way lower than expected. So those are really two different stories. So that means the consumer is still seeing 3% inflation, even though the Fed has, they have a mandate of stable prices, which they've now morphed into 2%. Well, you can have your feelings about that one way or the other, but let's stay away from that for a second. And again, what that's telling us two different stories. And I think we feel it, the consumer feels it. If you're a rep on the street, you feel it. There's still inflation happening, and especially at the grocery store, which is where we live, and that's where we're competing for dollars. So despite the fact that we're still seeing inflation, 100 basis points higher than the Fed's target, they still cut rates. And again, we can speculate as to why they did that, but the hope is that a cut cycle, and this is why everybody's excited, right? So if you listen to people in CNBC and the financial media, they say, this is great. We're going to cut rates because it's going to help the consumer. This is going to bring down mortgage rates. It's going to free up basically debt leverage for people to start spending again. This should all, in theory, be welcome news to us in our industry, right? Because we're competing for the marginal dollar. That consumer's walking in the grocery store, we want their dollar. We want them to buy our product because their spending is our income. The irony is what we actually saw is something different than what we've normally seen. We actually saw this one time before when they started cutting in that kind of mid-cut cycle. but we saw something we don't traditionally see. And I think this is really important for us to double click in. So before they made the cut announcement, interest rates had moved down to roughly 4%. And when I say interest rates, what I mean is the 10-year. And this is what Bud's pulled up here. 10-year is longer out on the curve. So there's 10 years, there's 30 years. 10 years is a good benchmark for kind of longer term rates. Historically, the Fed is on the short end of the curve, right? So they're setting interest rates on the short end, i.e. T-bills, those sort of things, right? So, they have disproportionate impact on the overnight lending rate and those sort of things. Traditionally, they don't have impact out on the long end of the curve. But their actions on the short end historically have impacted the long end and reduced rates. So again, everybody was excited. Quarter rate basis rate cut would actually bring down interest rates on the long end. What we've actually seen since the cut is a 14 basis point move upwards in rates on the long end, on the 10-year. This is not what the Fed wants to see. This is not what we want to see for the consumer. So the long end is not behaving. So what this really means is interest rates are actually going to go upwards now. Now they've come down in anticipation of the cut, but now they're moving back up again. So where does this lead us? Well, it puts the Fed in a weird spot, right? They're still rolling off their balance sheet. So that is all the mortgage-backed securities and treasuries they bought during the 07-08 crisis and then also the COVID crisis. So what can the Fed do? Well, they can continue to cut. They can stop QT and start QT or QE again, start buying the long end and call it something like Operation Twist or something. I just stole that from vernacular. They won't call it QE. They won't do that because that'll spook the crap out of people.
It's the wrong branding. We need new branding.
It's all about marketing, just like in the beer space, right? You got to put it in a pretty bottle. Or they, QE is going to be basically their own answer or their only answer, or, some kind of Operation Twist type in maneuver where they're buying the long end, selling the short end and trying to make it net neutral. But I think it's important for us to watch this because the hope was that we would drive down long-term interest rates, we free up more capital, and we have more consumer spending. So this is going to be important for us to watch because I saw what you sent me earlier today, Bud, and we're still seeing persistent single-digit declines in our industry. So this is going to be important for us to watch and see if we start to see the consumer turn around, whether we see more cuts, more rapid cuts, we have some kind of stealth QE. Anyway, I think it's important to watch because, again, we're tied to the consumer here in a pretty important way.
Well, to your point, inflation hits, again, a 2-year high in August, growing at 2.7 on an annual clip for grocery inflation, specifically. Yep. So like all the stuff we buy for everyday consumer staples, beef, eggs, coffee, and beer has been behind the curve of that growth rate more recently. So it's trying to be behind the curve. But to your point around price increases, we are hearing from our client base as a whole that it sounds like most of price increases are looking to be held through Q4 of 2025, looking to Q1 2026. And that I find interesting because one of the big producer increases in inflation is the aluminum prices have gone up considerable. And there's a ton of aluminum that goes into selling beer because a lot of beer is sold in cans. And that's a Midwest premium, benchmark or whatever they call it, strike price, has gone up considerably in 2025. So somehow the largest of the large are able or are currently weathering the storm, or they're choosing to eat it because Molson Coors, Anheuser-Busch, Constellation don't want to put a price increase on an already weak consumer in an already weak volumetric market for them as well.
Well, it starts to make sense if you look at it, from that perspective we just talked about. So if producer prices are on the balance, maybe aluminum excluded, heading downward, the theory is that consumer is downstream of producer, right? So if the producer is getting relief now and actually seeing deflation year over year, then they're in a position where they can do that, right? And they're still competing for that marginal dollar we talked about, where beef prices, cereal prices are all exploding still upwards at a 3% clip. And that's not insignificant. I forget the math on it, but how many years it takes for the value of the currency to be cut in half at 3%. It's not insignificant.
It's like 14 or 16.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's right. So 3% doesn't sound like much, but when you think about it, like in 14 years, your currency's value is cut in half. It's not insignificant. So weak consumer, persistent inflation, especially at grocery. I think it makes sense if you look at it and zoom out. Because if you look at it and just say, well, why are we pulling back on price increases? It starts to make logical sense, and I'm glad they're doing it.
Like volumetric ways, it makes sense. Mike, are you hearing the similar kind of story from clients too?
What are we talking about? I'm totally kidding. That was my funny spin on it. But I didn't hear what the question was because I was reading.
Are you hearing the same kind of thing from clients around price increase planning into Q1 of next year? Because we do budget planning. We get involved with budget planning with clients. We get involved in goal planning with clients. So these are things we're regularly talking about. And like, what is the finger on the pulse from pricing too?
Yeah, no, a couple real small suppliers did a price increase, or planning on doing one in October. But yeah, the majority, especially the larger suppliers, we're looking at February of next year.
I think we have to remember too, in the industry, as most of our listeners are distributors in some way, shape, or form, or somebody inside the distributor, our KPI metrics are vastly different than a producer or a manufacturer's metrics. They talk a lot about it's capacity utilization would be the right way to describe it. And all of our larger brewery partners have multi-brewery operations. And when they are thinking about their return on effort or their margins and their own game, these things make the most money when they're at max capacity. So volumetrically, if we're having weaker and weaker volume, you have all of this iron and steel and aluminum to put to work in a manufacturing facility. You want it to run as fast and as quickly as possible, basically 24/7 all year long. That's how you make your maximum buck as a manufacturer. So there's some incentive around managing price increases in the lens of manufacturing capacity. But the other piece is like the largest suppliers are jockeying around a ton of market share numbers now too, Ross. And Mike, we've had AB on a market share tear this year, really grabbing market share back from Molson Coors in Constellation. And you've got a bunch of market share moves as a microcosm of the market, being in RTDs, where you've got High Noon is slowing down its growth, but you've got the other players that are quickly gaining their growth. And you better bet and believe that decisions that are made at the top of the biggest suppliers out there are derived off of what they think price elasticity will drive, which we've talked about before on the podcast, and market share gaining or losing based on what they do with price increases too. So that's a big metric that's coming into play as well. I think
and not to spoil a private conversation you and I had, but I think you said something really insightful yesterday to me, which is, if I were AB, and I'm quoting you, I would use this opportunity to go grab the share, right? If you've got good economies of scale, and they've been focused on cost cutting and margin expansion on two sides, right? So operationally, and then also they've been pushing the price increase envelope pretty hard ever since the NBEV acquisition. I don't think that's any secret, but this is almost the playbook of August Bush's playbook of go for market share. Now it might be the time, because it's similar to what Tesla did, right? I mean, their margins compressed and they went for market share because they had huge overhead, and they knew that if they got to scale, the marginal cost would reduce, and then they'd own the market. Well, here we are, 5 years later, and they pretty well own the market. I mean, the Camry is not the best-selling car in America now. So I think it was very insightful. I mean, obviously, you're not at the control switch of AB, but this is probably a good opportunity for them to do.
One could only hope, if I ever was, right?
I don't know, man.
But yeah, it's a pendulum swings, right? From 2000 and really kind of like 96 to 98, all the way through the early 2000s. It was a market share game, price wars from an Anheuser-Busch perspective of just grinding away for every ever market share point. And now you've got a market share shift on the back of the 2023 chaos into 2024 and 2025. And the stuff that is working for AB and the headwinds that Constellation's also having from the 3Hs, as we've talked about last week as well too, which the whole industry is having that too. It does just make sense to kind of, if you're AB and if you're sitting around the campfire talking about what you want to do, how you're going to strategically manage your price increases. We've also, Mikey, over this time period, raised to draft into perpetuity. And that is probably one of the most aggressive areas that price increases have come into play, is through the draft network. And we've crushed on-premise in the process. And there's been a nice smoothing of like, maybe on-premise is more important than what we think it is. And maybe we should start to think about that more than what we maybe did in 2018, 19. Definitely 2020, it didn't matter at all. And like, that's got to be on people's minds too, right, Mike?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and when you say the on-premise, I mean, volume-wise, on-premise is not a great picture. Dollar-wise, it looks a lot better, right? Especially through the lens of
better
the
look
account
better.
owner.
We're charging $125 a keg of Miller Lite and Coors Light, and like it better look good.
I know, but and if you think about, I mean, this whole conversation is spot on. And even though the Fed cut the basis points, right, that doesn't affect the bottom line of the customer. Right. They still have their car loans at 8%. They're still paying 22, 25% on their credit card interest rates. It's going to take a while for that to really come in. And the first thing that we know that gets cut out of the budget is alcohol. And if we're looking at a price increase coming, we've watched this happen before too, where people just run to spirits.
Yep.
Where it's cheaper at home to make a cocktail, you're bigger bang for your buck. So we have to be very cautious coming into a price increase at the beginning of the year when things have been really, really tight. But on the opposite side of that too, we're talking about on-premise, and we always try to look for other opportunities, right? So if we're in this game and we're getting squeezed and people are not spending the money on draft, maybe it's too expensive or they're cutting down, what are the other opportunities? Where else can we look for, right? Is it a can special? Can we drive some value somewhere else in the on-premise that nobody else? Can we eliminate the competition by saying, hey, they don't have a can special or a bucket special or 19 twos? I mean, still the greatest thing that ever stuck with me was the 19 Tuesdays promotion that I saw at an on-premise place, where you're saying, all right, hey, consumer, if you're not wanting to spend the dollars on draft, how about I offer you a great product at a lesser overall cost? Might be less fluid ounces as well too, but hey, here's a great value and a great product as well. So looking outside of that and chasing some of those dollars that are still available on premise.
I love it. Now, Mikey, moving towards how we're applying these things in the market, we were both on site the last 2 weeks. How has that been in the trade? What have you noticed in the trade? Any fun stories from the road that we want to talk about related to this, or just being in the market, working with reps too?
It's always fun to be in the market, and I admit, we were at home most of the summer, not out in the market, so it felt great to be out riding with some reps, riding with some team leads, getting into some accounts. But yeah, I mean, everybody's feeling the pinch, right? And it doesn't matter what state you're in, what market you're in, the volume is still declining. I mean, it's no secret; it's an industry trend that's just happening all over the country. But being on the other side of that now, right, introducing VXP to some reps out in the market, or you walk into an account and automatically you see, they're down 6% in volume, right? And your shoulders just kind of go like this, and you just feel a little like, damn, I really wish I could get that flat or positive. That would be great. And then when we flip the lens, like we always talk about when we look at gross profit, and they're up 4 or 5% in gross profit, that swing, hey, you're down in volume, but you're winning here because you're growing your gross profit. It was so nice to see, because there was a lot of accounts like that where the gross profit was up and volume was down. And one great story, we were at a Walmart account, and the rep, we were looking at that, and that those trend figures that I just used as an example was at a Walmart account where they were down in volume, and the rep goes, oh, great. And then we started talking about Good to Grow and other products like that were in the account. They were kind of driving those dollars. And he goes, oh, so that Good to Grow display or end cap that I have is a good thing. Like, it's a great thing. Let's go check it out. So yeah, so we walked over and we looked at this end cap of Good to Grow. Now, and for you that are not on YouTube, I'll describe it in a minute, but what do you take away from this display? Look at the placement of this display. Where is it?
It's right by all the kid stuff. You got the diapers in the background.
it's sandwiched in between baby food and diapers. Every parent that has a child in the cart has to go down that aisle one way and what do those kids see, right? And you're not going to escape going down that aisle without grabbing one of those little character bottles and throw it in your basket. So great placement, outside of the box thinking. And then he went one step further because he was like, hey, I also have another incremental display. This was not planogram right at the checkout. So shove the whole end cap full of good to grow. And I was like, boom, this is why we're seeing that low volume or volume declining, but your GP, your ultimate profitability in this account is growing. And it's because of these items that probably 15 minutes ago really didn't matter a whole lot to you because they're slower on the volume side, right? But now all of a sudden, this is what's saving your account. These slow volume items, high profit items. So that was great. I mean, I love seeing that, but the mind shift out in the market and a lot of it, I mean, we talk about like dollars being pinched and dollars being squeezed. It's a lot easier to spend $20 on 8 cans than it is to spend $20 on 30 beers because you're like, do I really need 30 beers? Maybe I'll just grab that 12 pack. But right, hey, I really like these cans and I like this fluid that's in here, whether it's vodka soda or vodka lemonade. Yeah, $20 is worth it. Right? There's that mindset change within the consumer too, and we're driving that at retail. But ultimately, great week. Spent a lot of really good time with some great reps. Saw some great execution. And sunny state of Florida. Never saw the sun once. That's a side topic. But I did get to cruise around in the Busch Light Jeep Wrangler, and that was pretty awesome. And people, regulars on the pod, they know that I'm a Wrangler fan, and I have one. And this thing was sweet. It was all wrapped in camo with the Busch Light logos on it. So yeah, we hit
This is the Mikey
the
Mobile.
on-premise team. It's the Mikey Mobile, yep. The on-premise team and I cruised around in that. So if anybody's listening that owns a sign shop and wants to wrap my Jeep, that'd be great. We'll go ahead and do that.
We'll go ahead and do that.
But there was one other really, really cool thing from this client too that was awesome to see, and that was Miss Budweiser, the hydroplane from back in the day. Miss Budweiser ruled the roost when it came to hydroplane racing, and here is this beauty sitting in their warehouse. This thing is amazing. Over 200 miles an hour on the water, but it was really, really cool to see. And also knowing that when my father-in-law was in advertising for AB, he did all the advertising for that. So I have a lot of those stock like images and billboards and all that stuff still here. But no, that was cool. They're actually shipping that off to go to Daytona.
It's a museum, right?
Yeah, to the Hall of Fame. So
you gotta love that. It's cool. I can't believe they didn't let you drive the semi truck.
Well, that's why it's in the warehouse, because they said they used to use it for promos and stuff, but now everybody's afraid to drive it.
They're afraid to drive
the rig. Retired, and now everybody else is afraid to drive it. But I told him I have a CDL. We can go put that thing in the water.
I don't
take it for a spin.
I don't blame him for being afraid to drive it one bit either.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, huge shout out to the team. Some great execution. Saw a lot of light bulbs go off. And the ultimate takeaway from that really long story there is what we talk about all the time. And it's when you walk into an account or you look at your sales numbers for your route or you look at your sales numbers for your whole organization, and we're looking at red volume numbers, it's a sad story, right? When we look at green GP numbers, it sure is a heck of a lot better story. And that really drives us, especially as reps. Right now, I'm well, what else can I do if I just increase GP that much by these few items getting on display, or what else can I really do here? And that's just a whole new motivator.
Get out of the doom loop, right, Ross? It's so much fun to focus on some greens, find some upside, and kind of, have like the fun culture connection around that as well too.
People like to win.
Give them away. Yeah. People like to win.
And if we're not winning in the Bev beer aisle, where else can we win? Where else do we have some opportunities? Because, yeah, we're cutting down on spending on alcohol, but you're not going to tell your child no to something like that, or you still need that boost of energy in the morning, or you still like to get your iced coffee, or whatever segments we're playing in.
Well, I woke up on Monday with a massive headache and couldn't sleep and was up at 4 a.m. So I drove out. And this is the Sunrise Biscuit Company. It's open at 5 a.m. and closes at 2 p.m. every day out in Henderson, North Carolina, and had me some breakfast.
When Bud sent this to me, I said, well, when you get back, you're gonna have to cleanse. I mean, that is That is some heavy food right there.
I've already cleansed, bro.
There is no green on that plate.
I walked into
There's
this.
some in the omelet, maybe.
I walked into this joint and they could tell I was a city slicker right away because I rung up this order and they were like, "That'll be $500, please." They know that everybody coming in there. I was the only one who sat down and ate, and because the client wasn't ready to come see me, I was up. I was here at this restaurant 6 a.m. We weren't going to meet until 8, so like I had a couple hours to kill, and like maybe like 7. I had like an hour to kill, I think. And the they were just like 6 tables in. They sell everything to go. Everybody else that came in was grabbing a bag and going, and the Biscuit Co. It was awesome, so good. Get my week started off straight. The other thing that I watched happen this week too is same to your concept too, Mikey, is that we were going in and out of stores on a regular basis, checking out stuff and working on things, and was introduced to a new concept, at least a new description, the way that one of the team leads was describing, like, we want to find airspace. Where's there airspace in the cooler? There was a bunch of opportunities in the stores that I was going into where there was just dead space in coolers, and that we could add more shelves and find more shelving. Like there was 3 or 4 inches between each shelf. If you add that up over a 6 shelf set or 6 shelf door, you could add another shelf inside of that. So here's a rep actually, working through and pitching the idea to the store owner on what we had planned, and that he's going to pull a couple of underperforming craft items out of the set that aren't doing really well. And he's describing how he's going to grab more space and move in. I think we added 10 new SKUs to the account in one visit of all high GP incremental beverage alcohol items.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yep.
That takes me right back to Tommy. Tommy would always target the water door, right? Because if you see dead space in the cooler and we could sneak a whole nother, shelf in there and get some singles on it, or maybe even a 6-pack if there's a lot of space. And then the account owner right away would, we don't have any extra shelves, which they typically don't. And then we'd go right over to the water door, and what's on the bottom of the water door? Gallon jugs of water on a shelf. Those don't need to be on a shelf. Hey, let's throw some of those pop crates under there, or let's just put them right on the ground, right? I mean, you can raise them up, and here's their shelf. So that's where my mind went right on that too, because if there's dead space in the cooler, there's always opportunity.
We were also doing some research in an account, and one of the things that we saw was underperforming SKUs, and we were looking, we were checking the new updates that we've done inside the application, and we were looking at opportunities of items that were doing poorly. And one of the items was like, was Form Energy. It's a new item, like it should be doing good. But what we noticed was that it was in the completely wrong part of the store. So we looked at it in more detail, and we came over to the coffee section, and the coffee section had all the Johnny Bootlegger. Now I want to call out what this sign says for everybody. It says, "Do not put in cup until it's paid for, management." So you can totally drink and drive from this account. They're not going to stop you from doing that, but you better pay for it first.
Better pay for it first. And they had a lot of people doing that before they had to put the note up too. That note was inspired by some people's actions.
Somebody did that. Yeah. Multiple people did this. So what we learned from looking at the data inside the account was, hey, Bootlegger was not doing well on this account either, and neither was Form. These were both suboptimal SKUs compared to the other average gas and convenience store in this market. So what we worked with the rep around was like, where are the placements at and where should they move to? And right next door to this cooler is the actual Red Bull cooler. So moving Form from where it is closer to the beverage alcohol over to where the Bootlegger is next to Red Bull, and then flip-flopping Bootlegger back, these are the kinds of moves that you can think about if you're in the market with your reps, or if you are a rep listening to this. These are the dumb moves that we maybe haven't pulled our head up and thought about this strategically in lately, and said, hey, if I made this little change, I don't even need to add anything into the account. I can change to where things might place and see if that can improve the velocity of the item as well.
Or you solve 2 issues with one, and you just tell the manager of the account, hey, if you're having an issue with people filling their cups with bootlegger before they pay for it, let's put it right on the counter. That way you can keep an eye on it.
Could do that too.
And then you're
Then it's
staring at
not
it as you're
cold.
checking out. You're like, oh, damn.
It's not cold then, Mikey. It's got to be cold.
Well, then you can tell them where it's cold.
Just
cold
this is one of these moments where you question the morality of what we're doing here, guys. That's a great pivot. Let's talk about THC. Great margins there, guys.
We don't
put
need
it on
to
the counter.
question the morality. We don't need to question the morality.
Send them out with a keychain.
I love it. I love it. So the last thing I noticed this week, or I talked about with another client this week, I made a pit stop on the way back home yesterday to another client, was this, and this kind of feeds into the inflation conversation, Ross, is that C-store, there's a big C-store, I forgot which C-store is going to run this, but one of their big C-stores in their market is going to run 99-cent 12 ounce and put them in the suction cup racks. And they've got, this is an example door that they built in their warehouse to kind of like show the reps, like this is what they're going to build out and work on in the stores. The funny thing about this though, is that like, how are they going to keep these stocked at 99 cents? Somebody's going to come in and buy 3 or 4 of these at a time and like move on, because this is going to be pretty good pricing, or at least for one. Maybe there's going to be guys that are going to look at this too and be like 25-ounce cans, $1.79. I'll probably buy 2 of those rather than 4 of these at the same time too, though, right?
Yeah, but it gives you that smaller cash register range.
You're right.
Under $1. I mean, that's how many times have we watched people come in and buy 3 or 4 singles over a period of time when they could have saved money and just bought a 6-pack or a 12-pack. Smaller register range feels better on the pocket.
I mean, it's a smart move, but it's a depressing thing to see. I mean, it's, again, we're competing for that marginal dollar, same number of dollars going less far. And that's part of the reason the single serve category has done well. I mean, it's not a sign of strength, but I mean, it's a smart move to play into the, again, it goes back to our conversation around, you play the field in front of you and as best you can. And that's a great example of it, which is, I mean, we're at the point now where people are buying single serve 12-ounce Busch. I mean, it's not Steel Reserve here, guys. I mean, this is a different consumer we're having to deal with that on the single serve side. But again, it's important to adapt to your consumer and maximize and meet them where they are, which is not a great spot right now.
It's not a great spot right now. Also, Mikey, too, when we started selling like 24, 25-ounce cans after 2008 became a really big thing. The other thing that I find interesting about a 12-ounce being at 99 cents is that was what 25-ounce and 24 ounces were back then. You could get a big can of Miller Lite, Coors Light, Bud Light for that much back then.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking, bud.
And that is the notion of lowering your spending power over time. Is you can physically see it at the grocery store or at the C-store, this example. One other thing I forgot to grab this week was the client sent me this too. I was going to show this to you guys and I completely forgot. But a local restaurant, I think over in the Chicagoland area, has put a hold on, they're going to cap beer prices in their on-premise account at $5 across the board. So no more $250 kegs, no more crazy $8 beers or $10 beers. Beer shouldn't cost you half an hour's pay. We're taking care of our customer, not taking advantage of them.
That's great marketing.
I find that interesting for sure. That like they're going to focus on this. And it is great marketing. It is a good focus. And where is this from? Times Union. Where the hell is that at? Electric Hospitality Group. Let's go find out where these guys are from. I didn't do any research on this.
Do it live.
Do it live. Yep. Great website, guys. Great Falls, Montana. It's what the Google says, at least. What do you guys think about that, too?
I think it's a great way to get people in the door. You know, for the distributor, it really caps what your potential to sell in is. Especially if you're going after some higher margin, higher GP items. But I think the foot traffic that they're going to get in with that kind of marketing will outweigh the GP that they're losing on the higher profitable items. But I mean, in this economy and what's going on right now, I think it's a great way to get people in, especially when everybody's in an uproar how much it costs to go out to dinner or out for a couple of beers.
100%. 100%. Will the trip back yesterday too, reflecting on the week, want a big shout out to CJ on the work that he did. That was a get rep that we were looking at. And then shout out to Buddy for all of his airspace conversations as well too. So that was awesome to see this week for sure. As two people I spent a lot of time with and did a ton of work. So it was a lot of fun to be on the market, a lot of fun to be out with the team and to get to work and see how we're going to see what Q4 takes advantage of too. Also interesting market down in North Carolina too. No RTDs in the grocery or in the C-store space either. It's all the ABC liquor store spaces as well too. So, no RTD work this week at all. It was just, classic beverage alcohol and A world. Looking to change that legislation in January though.
Did they have THC Delta 9 down there?
Oh, tons of THC and tons of Delta 9. That's a new growing market for them. Lots of focus on that for sure. 30 milligrams a can was one of the items that I saw, which I still think is just crazy.
Yeah, I saw. I didn't show you this picture. I took a picture of it, but because Florida is new to the game, legalized April of this year, I think. So they're new to the game, and they're kind of dabbling here and there and seeing where the potential is. But I did see a cooler about similar size of that little cooler, that bootlegger in it, all THC, all Delta 9, and in the middle shelf, middle of everything. I mean, these are all 5s and 10s we're dealing with here. Was a 50 milligram can, 4 servings per can.
Who are you sharing that with? You have to be sharing that with somebody.
Well, my thing was, I mean, here we are. We're tapping into whole new consumers with these Delta 9 products, and the word's getting out there. And there are people that do not consume alcohol or THC in its raw form, right? And that are learning about these. Hey, have one of these, 2.5, 5 milligram seltzers at the end of the night, and you relax just like a glass of wine. Somebody walks in to buy one for the very first time. They don't know what they're shopping for. They just, this flavor looks great. Boom, they get hit with a 50. I mean, I hope they don't have plans for the next 30 days because you're gonna be knocked out for sure. But yeah, that shocked me, especially in a state like Florida, where I think that as an industry, we should probably do better than that.
Ross, you've got to think about it. Like, why sell a 50 when you could sell 10 or 15 3 milligrams cans?
And that's it too.
Like,
that's
the part that doesn't make any sense to me.
That's the great thing about letting the market play out, letting the tournament of GP play out and velocity. It'll naturally find its way in the market, and it's going to happen at the point of sale. The customer is going to drive that function, and it fits nicely into our narrative or our argument that, you got to be adaptive, reactive, and quick. And we're going to find its way. I mean, shit, and maybe end up like 5 Hour Energy, where everybody's just slamming 50 milligrams of this shit just like on the checkout counter. I mean, who knows? I mean, if that's where we end up, that's where we end up. And that's what the consumer wants. You follow the consumer where they go. We'll see. It's the old adage, the old Chinese parable. We'll see. But again, I think this has been a slightly tilted negative in terms of the conversation today. But I think it's important to bring it back and say, one of the things I noticed, I wasn't on site with you guys, but these have been some of the most successful launches we've seen in terms of how quickly the sales team has responded and changed the mix of what's being sold to maximize profitability. I've never I haven't seen this quick and this level of reaction. So there is a hunger within the sales team to see green again, to utilize these growing portfolios in a way that makes sense at their accounts that they're dying for it. At least that's my reaction. I mean, I wasn't there with you guys, and maybe you can add some color to that, but the numbers definitely show a story I think it's a positive story.
I think you're spot on, and it's underdeveloped opportunities that now have new light on them because of what you were just saying. And I mean, and to go back to that 52, I mean, as suppliers, it kind of is that 4 beer rule, right?
Yeah.
You want to have your beer, you should be able to have 4 of them and be okay. I don't want to sell one person a 13% Imperial IPA and then they're good and they leave. If you want 50 milligrams, cool, buy a 4-pack. Buy an 8-pack or whatever they come in, and give me more money for those 50 milligrams. But that was my part on that. But I think where I was especially is, I mean, a lot of these packages that we're talking about, THC for sure, they're good to grow. Alani, they're a pain in the ass as a rep to sell. We've talked about this many times. They're a pain to merchandise because God forbid anybody fills their own shelves, right? It's a pain to sell in THC, especially if we're new to the game and these accounts are new to selling it and they're a little bit like, ooh, let's just try 2 and see where that goes. It's a harder sell, right? And I was at an account that was their leading THC account, and it happened to be right around the corner, the only account closest to an RV park, a Margaritaville RV park of all that, right? And what do we know about RV parks? What's the demographics there? I mean, older, retired, right? These are $250,000, $300,000 rigs that are pulling in here, and they were selling the crap out of THC, which was great. And a whole row, and they owned all the space, which was great. But then you walk into some other accounts where the opportunity was there and they have 1 or 2 SKUs. But when we come back to, okay, hey, I have a humongous opportunity to make more GP on these items. I was happy with 1 or 2 SKUs. I got it in the account. I checked my box. I'm good. But now, hey, where does the opportunity lie? I can't move an extra 30 cases of Busch Light or Mill Best or Miller Lite. But if I moved a couple extra cases of THC by getting some new flavors, different suppliers, maybe different milligrams in here to play around with that, hey, now I'm getting rewarded for my efforts. So I think that alone, shedding that light on that, is why those 2 clients have really shot up there right away, because we shed some new light on some products that weren't getting a whole lot of airtime.
Shifting the focus slightly, and we're not talking about, and I don't even know if I want to call it shifting the focus as much as it's shifting the perspective of how a rep is viewing the world. Because it's not like we're taking away focus from the core items that you need to sell every day, the core block and tackling. That is going to be stuff that you have to still accomplish to be able to hit anywhere close to your goals. But if we shift the perspective slightly in a way in which you understand how much that is important to you in an incrementality every little bit. Like I had a rep who strategically said, hey, I'm going to put out side stack display of 212s of Ultra over 18s, even though the 18s are moving slightly faster. This was a convenience store channel. It's like, hey, why don't I just throw the smaller register ring and a little bit higher incremental GP on the floor to capture that incremental purchase? And the 18s are in the cooler. They're right next to it. It's in the corner. They're literally right next to it in the same. And this place was like door of Ultra, and they were right there. So we're not distracting anything from the rate of sale on the 18s. It's just, hey, we want a 12. We're sitting right here ready to go at a good register ring and good price point. Get out the door at $16.99. So those little micro changes are incredibly impactful and fishing where the fish are. And where you can shift your perspective and win in new little ways and aid in that, that's where reps are getting excited about too, Ross. I think they're excited about having some leeway around thinking about their deadwood as well, items that are not moving in the store, and having some freedom to be like, man, this, craft item or this item or that item, I've got too much of it, or I've got not enough of this. And like, a little bit of leeway of like, oh, I actually can fuss around with this space, and I'm allowed to actually, optimize this space a little more efficiently than what I have thought that I'm allowed to in the past, because it's now in their best interest in a new way. where it wasn't in their best interest under the old regime. So that's what I'm getting excited about from what I saw this week too.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing too, I've noticed across our clients, a lot of our clients have turned positive or more positive over year to date on GP. And I'm seeing that trend accelerate. So yes, we've seen very little movement on volume, but we continue to see the margins increase. And, you know, a good majority of our customers are now positive for the year, if not significantly positive for the year on profitability. So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, there's a lot of positive for sure. Moving to where we're going next. So, and by the time this episode comes out, we will only be 3 weeks away from being together at NBWA in Las Vegas, where we also have to settle the bet. I don't know where you two knuckleheads are at on settling the bet on Busch Light Lime as well, but that's still out there. So the VXP team, we will be together at booth 1664 in the Milano Ballroom on Monday and Tuesday. That'd be October 13th and 14th. And then again at Tuesday, October 14th at 8 a.m. Set your clocks early, folks. Get to bed early. Make sure you don't party too hard. Or if you do, bring a beer and have your last beer of the night with us in our 8 a.m. educational session. Who's wagging who? And fix your broken incentives and take back control of your sales strategy.
Did you say 1664?
Oh, I did say 1664. That was a Freudian slip. It's booth 1614.
I was going to say 1664, and then we're sponsored.
That's the beer. That's the beer. It's booth 1614.
I was going to say, bud, you're a marketing genius. Let's get some 1664 and have it at the booth.
I'm not that smart, Ross. I'm just dyslexic.
Oh my gosh, I just thought you were a genius.
I'm not that smart, just dyslexic.
And being that it's Vegas, I really, really, really hope somebody shows up to the 8 a.m. seminar with a beer in hand because they haven't been to bed yet. That would just make my day.
Anybody who shows up to with a beer in their hand to our session wins a prize. We will have a prize there for them.
And it might be a 1664.
It might be 1664.
Might be a high five, but it'll be something.
You showed up with a beer. Here's another beer. Good luck.
Love it. I love it. Love it. Well, good episode today, boys. If you like what we're doing, like, subscribe, come see us out in Vegas at booth 1614, not 1664, but booth 1614 in the Milano Ballroom. And we will all be together there with the Silver Fox George. You guys rock. Cheers. And we will see everybody again next week.
Cheers.